I learned building networks really differently than other people.
If DNS works, it means everything is working because it's a layer 7 application, and that means all the stuff below it probably is working as well.
I did a lot of consulting work. I did a lot of field work, installing, configuring, troubleshooting over time. It's sort of opening line for my classes. I kind of joke about, hey guys, I got tired of doing that. So I'm going to teach you so you can do it on your own.
UDP is one way, doesn't get checked. TCP is a 3-way handshake and gets verified.
We need to do a better job of communicating that to everybody else, to people who come after us. Because if people don't have all the information, they may create a new technology thinking, oh, I'm going to solve this problem. But because you don't have all the historical facts of why things were laid out in a certain way.
Deep in the digital shadows, where threats hide behind any random byte, a fearless crew of cybersecurity warriors guards the line between chaos and order. Their epic battles? Rarely spoken of until today. Welcome to the Defender's Log, where we crack open the secrets of top security chiefs, CISOs, and architects who faced the abyss and won. Here's your host, David Redekop.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Defender's Log. This is episode number 6, and I'm very excited to have Josh Kuo with me today. He is the Educator at Infoblox. And Josh, welcome. Glad to have you.
Yes, thank you, David. I'm very happy to be on the show.
I encounter a lot of people in the DNS space. And just when years ago I thought it was a very small space, I see that it's still growing over the years. But then I think the actual DNS space itself is growing faster than the people. I'm constantly amazed at how broad the reach is of the work that we do in DNS. But before we get into some of the shop talk and technical things, tell us a little bit about Josh. Who is Josh?
So where should I start? Let me think. I'll start with why I got into computer stuff, which is interesting because growing up, my dad's a dentist. I assumed that's what I'm going to be. Everybody in the family assumed that's the path I'm going to follow. But I felt it was kind of boring. I was attending school at University of Hawaii, and I'm just like, organic chemistry, come on. I know how to tackle this problem. I just memorize all of this and I'll be fine. But then I took computer science 101. I'm like, this is new. And I'll be honest, I flunked the class. I sucked. But that was interesting. I'm like, this is not something I can memorize and conquer. So it really piqued my interest. Like, this is something brand new. So weirdly, I got into computer science because I sucked at it. Because it really piqued my interest. I don't know how to solve it. And then over the years, I worked as a small event ISP, which is full of many colorful stories that we deliver. Like if you go to a trade show or a conference, and speakers on stage, well, I would be responsible in delivering, making sure the internet connectivity to that stage or to the podium is good. So I learned building networks really differently than other people because I went to Networld in Iraq, which is a huge portable network. We use the address space /8, 45/8. That was the address space. And we'll use that to build a huge network in, say, Atlanta, pack it up, ship everything, go to Las Vegas, unpack it, let's start over again. So I learned network building very different than other people. Like, to me, networks had to be built in a matter of hours or days, not weeks, right? So from there, I went to work for a security consulting company for a few years. And then I encountered Infoblox and DNS. And that was super interesting because DNS in itself has a weird history depending on your organization or your team. A lot of people, DNS at their company is a Unix-y stuff, right? So it's the Ponytail guy in the basement that's running Unix server and DNS. And that probably inherited down to like a bunch of systems folks today running DNS. Some other places it's resides with the Windows team. And some other places it's run by the network team.
Right.
Some places it's all three and they fight over who owns which piece. So I happen to kind of know all these different sections, and so I kind of got sucked into DNS and been doing that ever since. So quite a while now.
Well, I can identify with your description of the kinds of folks that are responsible for it at different companies. My first exposure was when I knew we had to co-locate a server with our internet service provider's data center in order for us to have some kind of a reliable presence instead of relying on our ISDN to be able to serve enough bandwidth. And so I showed up with a box under my arm that was going to be racked. And this guy that I was introduced to, his name was Doug. Doug, I don't know when we're going to connect again, but I'll never forget. He was not your Ponytail guy, but he had the Unix beard, right? And then went all the way down. And I'll never forget that first interaction we have. So one of his first questions that's technical, he says, "So do you have a zone file?" I'm like, "What's
What
a
the heck's
zone
a zone
file?"
Right.
And then after what's the zone file response, then it's like 3 more strokes of the beard. Oh, this is what we're starting, are we? And so he was very patient. We became friends and interacted with each other for a long time until he got out of the business. But anyway, so yes, there are certain character types because all that stuff under the hood, so to speak, or the internet plumbing, as others refer to it, has to be done and has to work. And nobody notices when it's working, but everybody notices when it's not working, right?
Yes, exactly.
So-
Anybody who's run a network can identify with that. When I used to run one of the many past jobs was our team ran the networks for the convention center. And then they didn't understand, like, why do we need this whole team of people? We never have problem with networks. So they started laying people off and go, well, guess what? The network has problems. Like we worked hard to upkeep the network.
We were talking about layers just before we called, right? Because I had a layer 1 problem, right? And one of the coolest things about DNS and the discovery of DNS is I remember when it clicked for me. If DNS works, it means everything is working because it's a layer 7 application. And that means all the stuff below it, okay, with an asterisk, most of the stuff below it probably is working as well if your DNS is working. And to this day, I see, entry-level technicians, can I do an NS lookup of google.com? And if that works, okay, then I'm good to go, right?
Right. It's actually, so what I run, so I do customer facing education at Infoblox. Actually, so what I see is almost the flip side. There's a lot of people who are focused on web applications. So what they'll do is go to the web address, app.company.com, whatever. It doesn't show up. And then they don't have enough knowledge to troubleshoot correctly. And a lot of times, you know how the hierarchy goes, right? The app people blame the system people blame the network people blame DNS. So my job a lot of times is walk through, well, what does it do? And what steps can you take, like using NSLookup or dig or other tools to figure out what's working, what's not working, and why, and where do you go from there?
No, it's that's very interesting that that's the role that you ended up as being the educator. Did you eventually get to a point? I mean, given some of the publications you've written, like for example, DNSSEC deployment guide, like that gets about as technically nerdy as you can get. At what point did you switch to the education side of things?
So I think I've always had a tender spot for education. I had thought about going to pursue my master's degree and maybe teach at the university, but my grades were so bad. They didn't want me. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I need to go to find a real job. But I still love, just sharing my knowledge because I always think it's important. Throughout my career, my own career path, a lot of people, kind of like you mentioned, Doug with the beer, all right, took the time sit down with you and go, all right, dummy, let me explain to you how this stuff works, right? But not so condescending like I just did, but they did in a very, very nice way. And I want to be sort of that person for the next generation of people to come that's going to build and expand the internet that you and I have inherited from the generation before us. So I did a lot of consulting work. I did a lot of field work, installing, configuring, troubleshooting, not just DNS, but many, many systems. And over time, the sort of opening line for my classes, I kind of joke about, hey guys, I got tired of doing that. So I'm going to teach you so you can do it on your own. So that's partially why I decided I'm going to switch from, I used to do more 50-50 of field work and training. Now I do exclusively just training.
I see. So instead of giving a man a fish, you wanted to teach him how to fish.
Right. And hopefully I get to the part where I'm even behind. I'm teaching the teacher who's teaching you how to fish.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I still found myself last week asking one of our guys, I don't want to be taught how to fish. Today, I just need the fish. So there are
Yes.
times when one is needed and there are times when the other one is needed. Yeah. So DNS is a very broad topic. And one of the reasons I was glad to ask you to come on this podcast, Josh, is that Infoblox has been a really important leader in the industry in doing threat intelligence for large enterprise, for government, to the point where I see CISA documents coming out of the United States CISA group, where the only vendor that's mentioned is Infoblox. Like, first of all, good on you guys. Congrats on obviously doing good work in that space, for creating in a way, I don't know if it's you who created the protective resolver nomenclature that now gets used as a standard
No, I
in the
wish we could
industry.
take credit for that.
Oh,
Sorry. It's
okay.
and that protective DNS was created by NSA and CISA.
Okay. Gotcha. But you are definitely dominant in that space. And there's lots of opportunity for others now to come into that space. And we are excited to potentially be doing some things together in one way or another, because we have complementary technologies, let's just say. But tell me, because what our audience is interested in hearing is actual stories. And I know you have lots of them. So some that you can share where malware took a very interesting approach that was novel at its time. And once one malware author does something, then another group might adopt the same techniques. But tell me the first time when you're like, had a jaw-dropping moment of DNS being the vehicle for malware.
Sure. Okay. So, without just sharing the names of the parties involved, we found a case where the customer is a software vendor, so they have a lot of sensitive intellectual property, copyright material, and these are leaked, and they couldn't really find out why. We don't see any leakage, and after quite a bit of investigation, and with some of the Infoblox appliances in line, we were able to see, well, guess what? They're leaking out through DNS. This is quite a few years ago when DNS tunneling was not as common or well known. So we'd explain, educate the customer on, most people think, oh, DNS, you just look up a name, you get an IP address, and that's it. How can you possibly leak or steal data over that? It's like, well, there's record types and blah, 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 blah. We could do this. I could set up eviljosh.com. And if I get the malware on your computer, it could look up, hey, what's the name for xyz.eviljosh.com? And I get a response. That's a normal DNS exchange. But in this case, we can see instead of asking for xyz.eviljosh.com, it takes a stolen data and do something to it, in different encoding, and it becomes chunk of data.eviljosh.com and goes to the DNS server. Now, whether or not the DNS server responds is irrelevant at this point. The data already got out. And then the evil person running this website or domain just collects all this DNS information and then reassemble it in the far end to get back the exfiltrated data. So that was, I think, yeah, this is several years ago. And when I first learned about it, I'm like, wow, that's cool. Well, that's the first thing. And second thing, whoa, this is terrible, because a lot of people wouldn't think that they need to watch DNS as it's leaving their front door.
Yeah, that example is the classic, oh, this is cool. No, this is evil. Oh, but it's so clever. Oh, but it's so bad, right? When the bad guys find a new innovative way of exfiltrating precious data that's supposed to be secret, that's potentially intellectual property or personally identifiable information, that's bad news. Yeah. So how did you go about addressing that? Was that a feature change at that point? Was that a policy change? Was that an education piece? How did you go about addressing that?
It's a little bit of all, yeah. So it's a little bit of all of them. Infoblox does have our own feature that's basically watching the DNS queries as they're exiting in real time and do a pattern detection and go, all right, we don't know what you're sending out because we can't really decode it, but through the pattern, then we can see this doesn't look right and we're going to stop you. Right. So nothing is 100% a false positive safe. So we've tweaked it over the years to make sure that it's as accurate as possible to say, depending on the target domain name, the frequency of the traffic going out, the kind of pattern, the kind of string that's included, the record type, put all of that into consideration and go, yep, based on all this and what we know, this does not look right when we're going to stop you.
And then is this an approach that you then continually reiterate so that it becomes systemized so that others can then take advantage of the same findings you have found previously at other clients, presumably?
Yes. Yeah. So this type of intelligence is shared across. If you are a Infoblox customer, then you enjoy the benefit. So when the case I talked about was from quite a while ago. Now we have a cloud-based equivalent solution, so it's even faster. What we like to tell people is the first person, sort of patient zero, gets hit with something, and we catch it, then we can immediately apply the same protection to everybody else.
Do you ever go and compare notes with your dad and say, this is so much more fun than being a dentist?
He has no idea what DNS stands for.
So you could tell him a UDP joke, but he might not get it?
Oh, he would not. He wouldn't even get a TCP joke, not even with the three-way handshake. So,
oh my goodness.
yes, when I told him in the late 90s that I'm going to study computers, he's like, you're going to sell computers? No. Are you going to fix computers? No, Dad, I'm going to learn computer science. And he doesn't get it. So which is okay.
We do have some listeners that have a deep interest in DNS and even DNS encryption, but I feel like now's a good time to describe that UDP joke we just shared, because it is a good one that you want to use. So if you are an up and coming systems administrator, or you work in the DNS space, or you're in the security space, here's an important one. So there's two main protocols. There's others, but the two main ones are UDP and TCP. And UDP is stateless. So think of it like it just your mom or dad tells you something, then walks away, has no way of validating whether you heard it, and certainly isn't asking you to repeat it back, right? That's UDP. Whereas TCP, when I speak to my teenagers, I have to speak TCP. I have son, can you hear me? Then he has to say, yes, I can hear you. And after that three-way handshake, I know for sure we have communication established. So UDP is one way, doesn't get checked. TCP is a three-way handshake and gets verified. So the joke is that if I were to tell you a UDP joke and you might not get it, has the double entendre and that you might not even hear it. Okay, so that's the joke around the that in Josh and my circles we've been hearing for decades now.
Right. And then there's some implication to that as well. For a long time, many people, even people who've run DNS for a long time, may falsely assume they only need to enable UDP for DNS
Yes.
communication. Right.
Right.
And one of the first things I teach so Infoblox, I helped create this whole program. It's a vendor agnostic protocol class. I'll mention the link later. Any listeners, you can go there, sign up. It's not no vendor spill. It's just how does the protocol work. Um, so in that class, I always kind of make it a point to tell people you need both. Because when I get to the advanced troubleshooting, I say if you turn off TCP for DNS, it most likely will still work, but it will break in very subtle ways that you don't understand. Why does this query work and that other query does not work? Uh, so we kind of get into that, and just if you remember anything, I hope that listeners remember, turn on both. You need both TCP and UDP.
Right. Exactly. On that same note, I'm also going to use this opportunity to share a feature that we have is if we do a port 53 hijacking at the gateway, where you're trying to create an enforcement where devices that are trying to use, say, 8888 for DNS, we are hijacking it and then displaying it locally so that the sysadmin can actually see, oh, that endpoint tried to get DNS over DO 53 outside. We gave it an answer, it was hijacked, but by the way, you should probably fix that endpoint, right? And that visibility only works for UDP. It doesn't work for TCP, but both are needed to that point, Josh. Yeah. I have another question for you. Do you, at what point do you resort to allow listing versus block listing known threats?
That's an interesting question. You talk about blanketly that we're just switching to, I will only allow, I'm thinking almost like firewall in the early days,
Yes, right,
right?
right,
20 some years ago, we used to be, I'm going to allow all connection unless I explicitly block.
right.
And we very quickly realized that's not going to work. And then everybody switched to no. We're going to open a few ports. Everything is denied by default. So are you talking about that, but for DNS?
Yes, so DNS-based allow listing, I've noticed that we're not the only ones that take that approach for certain policies, but I noticed that it's even part of Pi-hole now, where you can create an allow list, so you're basically denying by default and then allowing what's allowed. And if that's not part of your part of your standard protocol, it just must mean that your threat intelligence is so good, or you have so many controls, whether they be reputation based or domain age based, or combine whatever level of advanced metrics or telemetry you have to basically say under these circumstances you might want to consider blocking it or block absolutely and then check afterwards. Is there any advanced controls like that you employ?
So for Infoblox products, I'm not aware of. I could be wrong because our products they do add features from time to time that I may not be up to date on. I don't think we have that to say default. Default to deny everything, allow only a few. Because I think I was in one of the conversations for that, and we realized I think you can sympathize with most customers who aren't gonna like that. 'Cause in theory, we know there's only about 100 or so domain names that people go to most of the time, but it's the
Right.
ones outside of that list that people are worried about. I fear from a pure technologist point of view, I think that's the direction we're moving towards. I hate to see it, but I think that's where we're going because from the at the internet scale, we have roughly 100,000 new domain names being registered every day, give or take. And guess what? 99% of them are just bad. People register it to do bad things. And there's a lot of discussion, a lot of things, people trying to come up with ways, how can we stop it? It's not as easy as you think. So I think at some point, it reminds me almost as that sort of gross South Park episode where it's like how much pee is in the pool. I think after a while, it would be mostly just yucky stuff. And that's kind of the way I see where our global DNS might be headed. It would just become almost majority malicious or bad domains. And at that point, we have no choice but to say we can only do allowed lists. If you're not on the clean list, we have to spend time to add you in.
Right, right. Yeah, and I would say that what you do in terms of domain categories is a form of allow listing. A lot of the terminology that we use is really quite ambiguous, right? But it means something in each individual context. But yeah, that's you hit the nail on the head when you talked about how large of a percentage, and maybe my numbers are out of date, but the last research number that I had was 86% of net new registered domains are registered with malicious intent. So the idea of trying to keep up with that is a very difficult journey for an individual to do. But you guys do good work with threat intelligence, really good reporting. I keep on seeing Renee Burton's name show up on LinkedIn. And a lot of the stuff that she and the team surface is really like eye-opening. And it gives us a picture of the trending of how the malicious actors are so well funded to be able to distribute their threats and their way of applying the threats in such a broad way that's so obfuscated that it even takes an advanced research team, sometimes months, in order to figure out who's doing what, where, and when before we can adequately block it. And that's why I think the approach of doing allow listing is the directionally right, the way we're going forward. See, the way I would compare our company versus yours is we started small. You guys are big. The larger of an organization you attempt to protect, the more difficult it is to go whitelisting or allow listing. The smaller the network is, the easier it is to start, right? And so this is directionally where we're headed, is that we need to find a way to introduce less friction when you go allow listing. And in your client base, you need to ensure there's no false positives when stuff gets blocked, right?
Right. Right. One of the most important things is always about we don't want to disrupt the business. And nobody can say for certain. This is another tricky part of DNS. It's like, oh, we see this name. Is anyone still using it? Nobody wants to raise their hand. Like, come on, are you still using this name? Can we block it? Can we delete it? It's like, no, just leave it. It ain't broke. Don't touch it. Just leave it in place. Right. That's still it's not just DNS. That's kind of like the mentality for most technical people. It's like, well, it's been there. We don't know why it's there.
Right.
Keep it there. And it's very hard until we can prove this is indeed a bad thing. Then we can take it out.
Exactly. Yeah, we had a very recent deployment example where we went live in a maintenance window, and it was actually with the design of being able to understand what the conditional forwarding needs were. It was an amalgamation of previous companies. So there had been a number of M&As that had taken place, and now we're centralizing and standardizing with Zero Trust DNS and taking that approach. And at some point I said, well, what's this domain? And someone's eyeballs just lit big up and said, we haven't used that domain in 10 years. Where are you seeing it? Well, I'm seeing it queried every minute. So it's obviously still in use somewhere. The funny thing is, if you start looking under the hood, everything at some point gets surfaced, and you can't hide because at some point, if you're enforcing that DNS to be done locally, then it will surface. So it's interesting how many past mergers and past uses do end up getting surfaced in that way.
Right. And yeah, one of the things that so my co-author Ross and I that we wrote a book that's sitting behind me about DNS security issues. One of the issues is exactly like you said. Companies merge, people come and go. You register domain names on auto renewal for 10, 15 years. People just forgot about it. and these become prime targets. Renee Burton, also head of our threat research, did the same thing. They call it sitting ducks. So they found a bunch of these domain names that are prime for takeover. And people may go, oh, who cares? You take over a domain I don't use anymore. But that become part of their malware distribution network. They can enjoy your reputation that you spent years or decades to build up, to say Mozilla.org, just make up an example, right? If somebody took over that domain and then I start using that to send out malware, any reputation-based system go, oh yeah, that looks totally legit. Let it through, and then that's what the bad guys are counting on.
Yeah, that is one thing that they're starting to see, that as protective DNS starts getting applied to more and more networks, they are strategically scooping up well-aged domains that are either stolen or they are just being registered after they drop off from the registry. And just because the registry dropped them and somebody else scooped them up, it doesn't mean that the distributed reputation engines have been updated necessarily, right?
Yep. And then at almost on this slightly similar scenario, we also see some stuff like with the dangling CNAME. So within the cloud, rapid moving space, right? You might go to Amazon and rent a name, rent an IP address, do your thing, and then you get out. Most people will remember they'll turn off the machine, but they may not remember the DNS is still in place. And to them, like, what doesn't hurt anyone. You go to app.josh.com, it goes to an IP address that's no longer responding. The problem is the IP address belongs to these cloud providers, and there are active scans out there to look for these, and then they'll just go to the cloud provider and say, can I also rent an IP address? And they'll just keep repeating until they get to the one that happens to be yours from a little while ago. And now, great. They can set up their fake website or whatever evil things they want to do. And when people go to that app.josh.com, they hit the same IP address from a little while ago, but now it's owned by a bad guy. And that was surprising for me during research to find out. The researcher that did this, it took him only 27 minutes
Wow.
to commandeer, to get back the same IP address. And he did it in a sort of much more measured, slow way. He's like, yeah, a bad person could spend more money, poke at this faster, and probably as soon as you let go of the IP address, they can scoop it up in a matter of minutes.
There's so much to think about when it comes to security. Why do you think that in the area of one of your publications called The Hidden Potential of DNS Insecurity, why do you think that there is so much more potential in DNS as far as security is concerned than at first meets the eye?
I think, well, this will be something that comes as no surprise to you or I, right? Most modern network communications start with DNS. Not all, but most. And that's a huge percentage. And if I can control almost DNS, almost like a choke point, then I can kind of stop or control your flow of your network traffic. So that is a area I think most security professionals tend to overlook, because I understand if your job is to handle security, IT security, cybersecurity, whatever your company calls it, that's a huge undertaking. There's so many things you have to look at, like data at rest. How do I secure that? Stuff in transit. How about these policies? So DNS seems like such a tiny little thing. People tend to overlook. If all you think is it's named to IP address, okay, move on. Let me go look at the next technology. Right. So we're trying to bring some awareness to say, yes, it's an older technology. It seems simple, but understand what it does and how it's currently already being abused could help you. The bad guys are using it, so we, the good guys, should be using it too to fight off the bad guys. So for one example, you mentioned encrypted DNS earlier. This is how we know bad guys are paying attention. So DOH, DNS over HTTPS, I can't remember exactly what year. It was 2019, I think, or 2018, when the RFC, when the draft, the specs came out of IETF. You can probably look it up real quick. And literally 3 months later, we see Godlua, Godlua, the malware that that's
Right.
counting on using encrypted DNS to hide its tracks. Because it used to be attackers need to be careful about their footprint, the stuff they leave behind in digital footprints in whatever in DNS. In this, they're like, oh, this is great. So they're
Right.
keeping the bad guys are keeping up to date, reading all the blogs, reading all the news,
Yeah.
right? All the new specs, and go, great, here's a new way for me to do some bad stuff.
Right. Yeah. No, you were spot on. It was October 2018 that the RFC 8484 was published. And I remember shortly after that, Godot came about. Godoh. Godot is a GitHub package that allows you to use DOH as a C2 channel. And that was also around the time when, even before this, Dr. Paul Vixie raised the big red flag to say, hey, people, DNS is an important control plane for a lot of people that carry the responsibility and liability for controlling network egress traffic. You've just yanked that carpet out from under us. This is a huge problem, right? So it was a case where we needed to start encrypting DNS so that it would no longer be clear text. But the unintended, I do believe was unintended consequence was that the Paul Vixie problem got started. And so that's partly what got us down a path of doing what we call don't talk to strangers, which is you were saying how most communications start with DNS. With don't talk to strangers, we force it to start with DNS. If it doesn't start with DNS, that's a stranger, and we don't talk to strangers. And so I find it interesting how all of our paths are converging, but ultimately the goal is the same, right? We protect people. That's our mission. And people with devices, people that are responsible for servers, for IoT, and so
Right.
forth. And DNS has such a central glue. And even though it's glue, it's completely hidden for most people. The only time, like we mentioned earlier, is that they know of its importance is when it's broken.
Yes.
And so we still have fun. Like even at DNS OARC, the tagline is still always, it's always DNS. Referring to when there's a problem, yeah, it must be DNS.
Yes. So it turns interesting you mentioned Paul Vixie. So Paul had several years ago, I think, he gave numerous talks about he's an internet of all of time, like Hall of
Yes,
Famer, right?
absolutely.
Listeners can look him up. His names are everywhere, not just limited DNS, but a lot of stuff. He started the whole response policies on RPZ. That was his invention. So he partially of what I'm doing kind of fits what he's trying to do. It's like, look, the earlier generations, we had created things in a certain way for certain reasons. We need to do a better job of communicating that to everybody else, to people who come after us. So like you said, unintended consequences. Because if people don't have all the information, they may create a new technology thinking, oh, I'm going to solve this problem. But at the same time, because you don't have all the historical facts of why things were laid out in a certain way, you might have created a solution, but several other problems at the same time. So I really subscribe to what Paul Vix is trying to do is let's educate more, right? Let's talk to more people. I always encourage people who come to class, like, ask me anything you want. I don't care. In fact, I challenge you to ask me the dumbest question you can think of, because it may not be as dumb as you think it is. Um, I ask a lot of dumb questions, and people, so I'm like, it's time for you to ask me whatever you think might be a silly question.
I have a question, and it's not intended to put you on the spot, but has anyone ever done research to see how large the database is of DNS? Like if you were to aggregate every single authoritative record on every single authoritative server, How many records are we talking about? How much disk space are we talking about?
I don't know that. I don't know. That's something actually DNS may have some, and Jeff Huston may have
Yes.
some data on. Jeff Huston is a great researcher, great presenter of AP Nick. I love
Right.
all his presentations and all his research projects. So, um, yeah, I think if you can get him on or contact him, that he may have the number.
I'm wondering if he's going to be in Stockholm in a couple of weeks. Are you going?
Yes, I am. So,
Well, then I'm going to see you there in
oh,
person.
great, awesome. Yeah, it'll be good to finally meet you in person.
Yeah, I'm doing a presentation on the things that break when you apply DNS at the root of trust. So it's just a short 15-minute presentation, but yeah, I'll be looking forward to feedback there. Very excited about that. So when I connected with you, you mentioned that you want to educate the next generation to build a better internet. Tell me more about that.
Yes, so that's partially why I love creating educational content. So I'm very, very lucky. I'm very grateful to Infoblox because actually had my own consulting firm for a while doing my own work, and then COVID happened. So I'm like, well, I gotta kind of put that on hold and join Infoblox full time. I've been working with them for over a decade at that point. So I'm like, this is a natural fit. And I brought the idea of how about we have, because one of the still our challenge when we talk to customers is they don't know enough about DNS to realize, oh, I need this as a control plane. Oh, I could do all this cool security control or whatever with DNS. So there's an educational component. So they were very good at letting me run with the idea. We created this vendor agnostic, protocol only courseware. So you can go to the Infoblox website, click on education, and you can sign up for free. So it will just be we have the online version. Sometimes I teach it as a live session as well to just go through how does DNS work, how does DSCP work, and I have a security track to talk about this is how people are abusing the technology, and none of it talks about Infoblox products because our belief is look, this is going to benefit everybody. You get educated, arm yourself with knowledge, and you decide what you want to do with it. You want to buy someone else's product, fine. You want to build your own with buying, go for it.
Right. Let's dive into that a little bit, Josh. I'm genuinely interested in your thoughts on this. Having been in the DNS space like yourself for a little bit of time, I used to think that everybody ought to know how DNS works. I thought that I needed to teach our sons exactly how a DNS works. And then at some point, I started to wonder whether it's always going to be a niche kind of mechanical or technical component that eventually will just go away, where the next generation doesn't even hear about the word DNS. Because let's face it, when they get a new phone from the Apple store or whatever store, then they turn it on. They don't ever ask about DNS. They just want to know if they have data or if they have Wi-Fi. And it seems like their lexicon does not go beyond those two words when it comes to the underlying technology that actually makes those bits arrive on their screen. I'm trying to get your perspective on how much of that education is going to continue to be essential, into how large that group is. Is that group growing in your mind? Or is that group going to be the ones that are like the technical, the CTO, the CISO, maybe to some degree the CFO, because they're going to be involved in the purchasing decision of DNS security, for example? How far does that go?
That's a lot to impact there. Let me start with I do the best to, so most of the folks that do come up end up attending my classes. They're not the CSOs or the CFOs. These are just nerds like you and I. Like they just want to know how the stuff works. But they do drive or influence the decision back home. right? So any good CTO, CFO, they're not going to know everything about every product. They're going to go to their go-to person on their team to say, hey, what do you think we need? So I see my job as I'm going to help that person make the best decision, even if that decision may not be going, to buy an Infoblox product. That's okay. I want you to know the technical information, how DNS, how all this stuff works. So you put together whatever works best for your team. And that benefits all of us, the people who spend time on the internet, right? I'm happy that you are now more efficient, more secure. Because that's, as a consumer of using maybe your product or your website, I get the benefit of that too. Now, as for future generation, are they going to be using DNS? I don't know. It's already outlived. So I had the fortune of meeting Paul Macapetras, at the inventor of DNS, twice
Wow.
at DNS ORG. He was at ORG a couple of years ago, and he had admitted, he's like, he never thought this would, something he wrote in 1984 would last till now, largely unchanged. Right? I mean, that speaks to how well he designed the system.
Yes.
It just keeps scaling, and he was like, I didn't think it's gonna live to this day and age. So I don't know. We might be on Starship, communication and go, we're still waiting for DNS. We might be at that stage. But even if it were to be replaced, whoever ends up writing the replacement needs to fully understand how the current version works, before you write a replacement technology, before you invent one. Otherwise, again, like we talked about, the unintended consequences, there's a reason why we joke about reinventing the wheel. You might repeat all the mistakes and more of the people who came before you. So I think on the call that we were on today, I missed the part where I was mentioned. I wrote a little something as a pet peeve of mine about blockchain DNS.
You did a good job on that, by the way, Josh. You did a fantastic job. I was just describing it to our team. You found a way to basically poo-poo something without poo-pooing something, Like when something is just a bad idea, or there's a way to basically come across to communicate it, to say, hey, your objective, let me see if I summarize it well for you, okay? The objective of blockchain fans, and I would count myself as one of them, having been one of them in the past, was, and there's still a place for it, but the fans of blockchain-based DNS are talking about it being decentralized, resilient, private, all of those things, and then you methodically basically said, well, even the objectives that you're after aren't being met, right? And you did it very well. So yeah, I would definitely recommend. What was that article called?
So that's on the my own blog site. It's DNSinsecurity.com.
Yes. And I see it right here, DNSinsecurity.com. And if you look at the most recent article on his site, you'll see it there. Very well done. And if you're ever thinking about doing a blockchain-based domain name of your own, just read that article first. There you go.
Yes. So
very good. Very good. So am I going to see you at IETF in Montreal as well?
Probably not. I am pretty busy, so I sort of had to pick between IETF and ORG. So I've attended a couple IETF meetings. I thoroughly enjoyed them, but they do more than just DNS. And I found out about ORG. This is where all the DNS nerds hang out. So I'm just gonna do this. Yeah, and it's much smaller. I was lucky, though. I think you'll be jealous. I attended the IETF that was in Honolulu in 2015. So we got everybody got a little IETF Aloha shirt.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Very nice. That would have been before I was aware of DNS ORG. I was only become aware of it in the last couple of years, and now definitely looking
it
forward to
is a
coming back.
very secret society. So, I mean, remember when I went to the first DNSO arc, my friend and coworker Rob Nagy dragged me to that meeting. I said, "Yeah, we finally," because he and I have been talking about we should have a meeting, like because we were doing trade shows. We're always, thinking in terms of events. Like, we should have one just for all the people who do DNS and try to get a couple started in the past. Didn't work out. And he found, hey, there's one already. It's just so small we never noticed. And we went to the meeting, and I'm like looking around. Is this it? It's just one single room in a hotel. Everybody fit into that one room. It was about 30 people. That was the entire event. Um, so it's always been small and intimate, and it's yeah, like you said. But you will be surprised. You go there and you talk to the attendees. Everybody brings to the table a different view of how DNS is being used in the world. Somebody will bring, hey, this is how it's being done at the service provider level. Some will say, well, I write the application for DNS, and this is what I see. Yeah, so it's very, very nerdy, very fun. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, when you look at the resumes of the people there, it at first looks like an extremely intimidating group, because these are almost giants on whose shoulders we stand, right, in terms of moving the whole internet usage of DNS forward in a productive way. But my experience was phenomenal. It was very respectful. You have a lot of guys that have been around this, and I say guys because it is what, 99% guys. But a lot of the attendees have been there for many, many years, and some of the stuff is old hat for them, and yet they're graceful and patient, and letting you learn as you go. And I asked some stupid questions, kind of like when I asked Doug, "What is a zone file?" And I was not laughed out of the room, and so it was an enjoyable experience, because
Yes.
at the end of the day, if you don't take the risk of asking dumb questions, then you're going to end up remaining dumb. And at least when you ask dumb questions, you find out afterwards that it was dumb. Okay, so it was embarrassing, but now you know something that you didn't know before. And so you just keep on doing that. And eventually you can turn that around and enable and empower others to be more self-sufficient. And that's one passion that I have that's very strong for our industry, is if we are able to empower intelligent decisions to those that hold the responsibility and the liability in a very easy and effective way, then we basically are going to eventually make it hard enough for the bad guys that they can no longer do the damage. And that's what we're both after, right?
That's a very ambitious goal. I hope we get there too. And I would add to the asking questions. 'Cause I want to really, I know as a teacher, a lot of people say, hey, there are no dumb questions. And I really want to say there aren't, because people have asked me things thinking, oh, I'm so sorry. This is such a dumb question. How does, why do we even need a DNS? Why do we need to change the IP addresses? Then I can go into, well, there's all the underlying stuff. Oh, I need to change the server. Maybe I change data center. Maybe my provider changed. All this stuff that if you've been doing networking and systems for decades, it's second nature. You don't even think about it. For someone new trying to break in, trying to learn this, it's not obvious. And I think it's really worth our time as people who already know it to be gracious and to answer as much as we can. So I only say dumb questions in jest. I really do believe, yes, ask as many questions as you can come up with.
Yeah, I'm reminding our sons on a regular basis to say, you're going to look smart by your answers, but you can look wise by your questions.
Ooh,
And so
that's a good quote.
it's worthwhile to think through the questions very, very effectively. And when you think about what do advanced interrogation specialists do, what does the CIA do when they're trying to surface some information from a suspect? It's by the questions, right? So you can actually make that the opposite of being dumb by just being focused on it. So my wife homeschools. Well, we have one son left to homeschool. The other ones have graduated out of homeschool, but I would be missing out if I didn't ask you one last question as the educator. What is the one thing that you would like the world to know?
The whole world, I would like, well, let me see. Wow, there's so many things I would like the whole world to know. I would just say, be curious. Find something you didn't know and look it up. And even better, don't look it up using AI or Google. Find a book in your local library because I love reading about history and just little random facts. I would suggest if you're interested in learning about how internet is connected, there's a book called "To the Center of the Internet." It's a very well done book. I think it's 15 years old ish by a journalist who are just wondering how's everything connected. So it goes through all the stuff about fiber optic cable under the ocean, how are continents interconnected. So I think even for someone who's done networking for decades, you could learn something from that book.
Very well done. Thank you, Josh, for coming on my podcast today. Is there any other notes that you want to leave with me or anyone on the team?
Appreciate it if you go pick up a copy of my book on Amazon. All right. The title is The Hidden Potential of DNS Insecurity. If it's too long, just type DNS insecurity in search and I'll find it.
Perfect. It's in my Kindle because that way I can take it along with me everywhere I go. Thank you for coming on today, Josh, and looking forward to seeing you in Stockholm in a few weeks.
Yes, likewise. All right.
Take care. Bye for now.
The Defender's Log requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.